Imagine the sheer terror of this for a second. It's the autumn of 79 AD, and Mount Vesuvius is literally blowing its top. You've got this massive, terrifying cloud of hot ash and noxious gas just raining down on the city of Pompeii, and somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, a local baker abandons his oven, leaving behind a freshly shaped loaf of bread. Because of the volcanic ash, that bread was completely carbonized. It was basically frozen in time for 1,800 years. Now, obviously an absolute tragedy for the ancient Romans, but for historians, and honestly, for food lovers today, it's kind of a miracle, because that blackened loaf of bread preserved a culinary moment in time that actually still dictates how we eat today.
So welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to use that ancient carbonized loaf of bread as a jumping-off point to trace Rome's incredible culinary identity. We're going to prove that Roman food isn't just a list of ingredients. It is a living, breathing historical artifact. Whether you're walking through ancient ruins or just standing in line for a slice of pizza today, every single meal in Rome tells a story of survival, science, and just unbelievable flavor.
All right, let's take a quick look at our tasting itinerary for today. We'll start with bread from the ashes, then move into the holy pasta trinity, check out the street food evolution, and wrap things up in the artisan markets.
Okay, let's kick things off with section 1, bread from the ashes.
So our focal point here is the panis quadratus. This was the iconic everyday bread of the Roman Empire that archaeologists literally pulled from the ruins of Pompeii. And the man behind the quote you're seeing right now is Pliny the Elder. He was a guy who passionately documented the exact grains that fueled Roman civilization, totally obsessing over the weight, the color, and the flavor of regional wheats. But you know what the wild twist to this story is? Pliny the Elder was actually an admiral stationed near Naples when Vesuvius erupted. He took a ship out to investigate the dark clouds and try to rescue his friends, and he ended up dying on the beach from the volcano's toxic gases. So the very man who taught us how Romans farmed and ate was killed by the exact same event that preserved their food for us to see.
Based on what archaeologists found and what ancient writers recorded, this is the actual blueprint for baking true Roman bread. You start by making a fontaine, which is basically a ring of flour, and you slowly mix in a sourdough starter, called a biga, along with salt water. But here is where it gets incredibly cool from a chemistry standpoint. That salt water, it wasn't just any water. Rome's aqueducts delivered moderately hard water sourced straight from limestone springs. And in baking science, water with a meaningful calcium and magnesium content actually strengthens the gluten network. When the wheat proteins gliadin and glutenin bond together during that 15 minutes of heavy kneading, those minerals tighten the mesh. It firms up the dough and helps it hold gas evenly. After kneading, ancient bakers would tie a piece of string around the middle to create 8 distinct sections, indent the center so it wouldn't crack, and bake it. It was a meticulous process where geology was secretly doing heavy lifting for the baker.
Moving right along to section 2, the holy pasta trinity.
Fast forward a couple of millennia, and that foundational love for wheat and dough evolved into Rome's absolute mastery of simple, sit-down pastas. I mean, you literally can't talk about Rome without talking about carbonara, right? You can almost taste the creamy, velvety texture of a traditional Roman carbonara made with thick rigatoni, fresh eggs, sharp pecorino cheese, and, most importantly, guanciale. Guanciale is cured pork cheek. It is profoundly savory, and when you render it down in a hot pan, it gives you these perfect, fatty, crispy bites that form the absolute backbone of Roman flavor.
And guanciale aside, this brilliantly illustrates the science behind another absolute Roman classic, cacio e pepe. Just look at this breakdown. The dish uses exactly 3 ingredients: pecorino cheese, black pepper, and hot pasta water. That is it. The secret lies in what the Romans called the amide, the starch and gluten left over in the water after cooking the pasta. That gluten acts as an emulsifier. So when you vigorously mix that starchy water with the sharp cheese and freshly cracked pepper, the gluten literally binds the fat and the water together. It creates this thick, luxurious, creamy sauce without using a single drop of actual cream.
So, the crucial takeaway here is that true Roman chefs do not need endless complicated ingredients to make a world-class dish. They rely on historical technique and chemical precision. But you know, it's tempting to go a little further with this story than the evidence allows. Because Rome is so famous for its water infrastructure, you'll sometimes hear this wild myth that Roman lead piping itself somehow improved the water for baking, that the plumbing was part of the perfection. Let's just debunk that right now. That is completely false. Lead pipes were used for household connections, sure, but lead contamination is a hazard, not a flavor upgrade. Even ancient writers like Vitruvius flagged the health risks. The actual chemistry that mattered for baking came earlier in the journey, from the limestone the water passed through in the mountains, not the pipes carrying it the last mile.
All right, let's jump into section 3,
the street food evolution. Because as amazing as those sit-down pastas are, Rome is a city that is constantly on the move. And believe it or not, you do not need to empty your wallet at some fancy restaurant to eat like an emperor. You can experience a completely life-changing, do-it-yourself street food tour right through Rome's historic cobblestone alleys for around 20 euros. Let me show you what that actually looks like.
First up, we've got the trapezzino. This is actually a pretty modern culinary invention from about 10 years ago, mostly found in vibrant neighborhoods like Trastevere. Imagine biting into a thick corner of pizza dough that has been baked so it is perfectly crunchy on the outside, but incredibly soft and pillowy on the inside. Then they slice it wide open and stuff it like a pocket with rich, slow-cooked, traditional Italian meals, like this incredibly tender stewed beef that just melts in your mouth.
Next, we have the ultimate battle of the deep-fried snacks. When you compare the Roman supli to the famous Sicilian arancini, there are some pretty big differences. The arancini is larger, sure, but the Roman supli packs this incredibly intense punch. Because it's smaller, it is so densely packed with sauce. You bite into a freshly fried supli, and you get this massive, iconic mozzarella cheese pull, followed instantly by a rush of rich tomato ragu or even a carbonara filling. It's literally like an entire bowl of carbonara condensed into a single deep-fried rice ball. So this timeline perfectly maps out a decadent day on the go in Rome. You start your morning with a meritoso, which is this surprisingly light, sweet pastry totally packed with fresh whipped cream. For lunch, you grab that trapezzino, stuffed pizza pocket. In the afternoon, a deep-fried supli to keep your energy up. And for the evening, gelato, obviously. Specifically from a place like Frigidarium, where they actually crush up pan de stelle cookies right into the gelato and then dip the entire scoop in dark chocolate. It just goes to show that Roman history isn't locked away behind glass in a museum. It's served fresh, affordable, and fast all day long.
Which brings us to our final stop, Section 4, the artisan markets.
If you want to truly eat like a local, we have to look past the heavily trafficked tourist centers entirely. When locals want real, authentic food, they head to places like the historic Testaccio Market. The vibe here is exactly what the locals say. This is where your nana eats. You trade the massive tourist crowds for unpretentious, incredibly fresh stalls. You can literally walk up and be served tender octopus ceviche mixed with potatoes and olives, paired perfectly with a crisp, dry white wine right in the middle of a bustling vegetable market.
And it's in these exact local artisan spots where chefs are pushing the boundaries of what Italian food can be. Take a look at this pizza from Piccolo Buco near the Trevi Fountain. They use a Neapolitan-style dough, and it goes into a blistering 800-degree oven for exactly 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Out comes this breathtakingly fluffy crust. Now remember that aqueduct water chemistry we talked about earlier? Well, Rome's water story didn't end with the empire. Ancient aqueduct sources like the Aqua Virgo that feeds the Trevi Fountain are still in use today. That means the exact same limestone mineral profile that strengthened dough in ancient bakeries is literally still running through the tap, giving this crust its incredible stretch. They layer it with sweet yellow tomatoes, spicy salami, and a mountain of creamy burrata cheese. Rome didn't build an aqueduct to make better pizza, it just happened to.
So from the volcanic ash of 79 AD to the roaring 800-degree pizza ovens of today, Rome's food is this incredible testament to survival, ingenuity, and passion. The family recipe was never wrong. The hands matter, the flour matters, the starter matters. But underneath all of it, quietly, for 2,000 years, there's been a layer of geology and infrastructure doing chemistry nobody even asked it to do. As you theoretically walk the ancient cobblestones of the Eternal City, ask yourself this final question. If a 2,000-year-old carbonized loaf of bread shaped how we eat today, what will our modern trapezinos and perfectly emulsified carbonaras tell historians in the year 4026? Remember, every bite you take isn't just fuel, it's a delicious, evolving piece of human history. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep your